Hello and welcome to the overview for Session 4, English 104A Research Writing. In this session, we have 6 topic outcomes. The first 4 are looking at grammar and punctuation and good writing skills. The 5th one is about constructively critiquing peer submissions. We're going to start the session with our very own work. And finally, we're going to start the process of editing and proofreading. We're going to look at why those two ideas are separate. The first 4 elements are grammar, so it's grammar time. These are things that take effort and practice. Many of you will have seen my frequent links to the Purdue OWL, that is Purdue University's online writing lab. They not only have great directions, but they also have grammar and punctuation exercises so that you can practice. The other key component to grammar and punctuation is an app like the Pearson Writer. Utilize resources like that. I use them myself. They are helpful and they help me focus and find all the small errors. Part of this is about working on our own work, that we become better and stronger and better able to communicate with our readers, but we're also going to look at using these strategies to become better readers and to help our peers. Critiques. These can feel very nerve-wracking. Remember, the goal is in the end to support one another. We're going to critique others, but we're going to start by critiquing ourselves in this particular session. When you critique writing, you become a stronger reader. We're going to practice, and then we're going to share that with our classmates. So I want you to please check out the separate video on this process. I have some ideas here for you, things like the resources within our course shell. There's a worksheet to look at. But I also want to introduce you to what I would call teacher speak, teacher ideas. And one of those that I find really useful when I am grading and marking and sharing ideas is PQP, praise, question, and polish. So I want to encourage all of you to look at that extra video to explore some of these ideas and get a little more comfortable with what peer critiquing is all about. Revising. Revising academic papers, we're going to need to do things like editing, and we're going to need to do proofreading. And these are different. So when we write content, it gets messy. We're thinking about ideas, the big picture, but once we have that draft, remember it's a draft, it's not the final paper, we can start to edit it. We can look at editing elements, which are ideas about organization, about clarity, whether or not we need to move things around, if they are working, if they need little adjustments, big adjustments. And then finally we do proofreading. That's the final stage. We start to look at the very small elements, things like commas. How do our references look? What's happening with language and spelling? It's a great time for me when I'm doing my editing to say, what do I think about specific words? Do I need to highlight those and maybe find a better one? The other important tip I have here is do these separately. It can get really confusing when you attempt to do them at once. So I tend to write down a few questions and I look at my paper with those ideas in mind. So I may ask questions about content and organization. I may ask a question about commas. I struggled for a very long time with comma splices, so I've found ways to search for those items and to continually review them. Next, I wanted to share this idea of our reading and viewing assignments for this session. As you can see, there are a lot of elements here. There are a lot of links provided in our course shell. I'm sharing this because I want you to see that you cannot cover and process all of these ideas at once. That is not the expectation. That is not the benchmark for this course. What we're doing is introducing you to supports. We're training you to master your own work. Each of you will need to focus on specific parts of the process. You will need to look at specific elements. We're providing you something for all of those, and then you get to see which ones you need the most. In this course, I am assisting you, but when you leave, you need to continue to master the skills of written communication. As I said, I worked many times on things like comma splices. So once I solve a problem, I then move on to the next problem that shows up in my work. We all do that as writers. We continue to grow. The discussion thread for this session, in session 4, is about patterns of organization. We're going to look at ideas about why we would only want to use one, and what sort of examples they have in our resource worksheets. So let's look at them in pairs. First, which pattern are you using? And are you using only one? Maybe why should you use only one? When you start a paper, you're not going to say, okay, I want to do listing. So let's see what my topic is, and let's see where my topic goes. Instead, you find your topic, you find elements that support it, and then as you begin to work, you start to realize that it's falling into a strategy. And that gives you the opportunity to craft it a little more closely and carefully. So look at your paper and see what it has fallen into, and realize that other papers will fall into other categories. Next, you're using these strategies for a purpose. When you find that a pattern is emerging, utilize that. And also begin to look at your own resources. What sort of patterns are the people you read utilizing? Part of doing these different elements is to understand that other writers are also using them. So the more you understand what those pieces are for your own work, you will get better at writing, but you will also get better at reading as you pick apart what other authors are doing and how they are sharing knowledge and information. Finally, our outline for our final paper. I want to cover this well. This is a new topic. This new topic should not be closely related to the first topic. We're doing an outline again, and then we're going to do a paper. Remember the key concepts from our first outline. In our first outline, it's all about the thesis, which we'll modify and grow. It's all about finding some resources. It's all about laying out the bones of what we need. So we need 3 main points. We need a thesis. We need some references. This is not about having the perfect outline with absolutely every single spot in place right away. It's about using the outline to do our best work. So we're going to do a second paper, and a lot of questions come up about grading it. Am I going to be looking at the second paper that you do in 1.5 weeks the same way that I'm looking at this paper we've been working on since session 1? Absolutely not. I'm going to be looking at this paper in session 1 through 4 and saying, how have you grown through each stage? And then for this one, I'm going to say, how are you incorporating these ideas? Is this first draft better than your first draft of your first paper? Have you begun to utilize these concepts? I'm essentially looking at it as a second draft. Remember that it needs 5 academic sources and 5 to 7 pages to cover. Also, check out our separate videos on PQP, personal and peer critiques, as well as videos on APA with in-text citations and references, and the other videos on editing and proofreading. Thanks for joining me, and have a great session.